Well, thank y'all for being here. Seriously. I guess y'all don't know, my podcast has transitioned to where I'm interviewing couples now and just asking them about their story and what they've grown through and been through, and how really highlighting for people there's not one way to do it. And there's not one path, but also my own genuine curiosity of, are there commonalities between couples who've been together and for a long time and made it work and still like lit up and passionate about each other? And I'm starting to find that, which is really fun. So these episodes are fun for me. And also I've noticed my audience are used to this stuff, but your audience is going to fucking love this because and I literally, like, when I interview people who have an audience, their audience eats this shit up because they're like, you're used to talking about money. And then they're like, they talk about your love life. And then it's this whole other thing. Just forewarning, it's going to be awesome. But yeah, and I just want to say thank you all for just coming on and saying yes to this and being vulnerable and wanting to share in this way. It means a lot.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
I'm
very
so excited that we get to be here. Like, truly excited.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you're here. Like,
we're here.
Yeah.
And when she told me it was you, I was like, I remembered Kevin. Like, yeah, this is going to be great.
Where did we met it?
We met Ronnie's birthday.
Who's? Johnny's birthday. That's right. Because I was like, well, I think we met it with Johnny, but yeah, it was his birthday. That's right.
A lot of people meet with Johnny. I feel like, he's kind of that kind of guy.
He's a super connector, that guy.
Definitely is. Sweet. Well, let's dive into things. So first off, I was talking with Jenna about an event that we were both at. She was the speaker, and this was like the after party after everybody left, and it was like 5 people left, and we were just kind of chit chatting. And somehow along the way, she brought up her relationship and how gave like the high level story overview of it all, and I'm over there like, oh my God, I have so many questions. I'm like, can I interview you?
We're chopping at the bits. You're like, just come on my podcast.
and you were just like, yeah, I'd love to, which was so awesome. So I'm excited for this one. Really for that reason. I know a little bit. I don't know all of y'all's relationship, but I would love to know how y'all met and how it all started. And let's just start there.
You want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah, I'll jump in. So we were living in Michigan at the time. It's where we both grew up. And we were in Bloomfield Hills, and we both started doing CrossFit. And so we met at the CrossFit gym, but we didn't meet just on our own accord. There was a lady there.
Yeah, there's a lot of people there.
There was a lot of people there that knew us, but knew us individually because we kind of showed up at different times of the day. And they knew that we had recently become single. And so they started playing matchmaker. They started coming over and chirping in our ears saying, hey, have you talked to Jenna? Do you know anything about Jenna? And I'm like, no, I haven't met this girl yet. And they were doing the same thing to her. They're like, do you know this guy, Pat? He works out in the morning at this time. And so then all of a sudden,
I'm like, I have my eye on every handsome guy in the gym. I'm like, yeah, I know Pat. Of course I know Pat. I got him. Yeah, I'm taking notes for him. Yeah. But it was I would say it was like a very past life of ours, right? Like we look back then and it was like, it feels like lifetimes ago, right? Because we are nowhere near. I mean, we're CrossFit junkies and in completely different parts of our lives. Didn't have a spiritual awakening yet, like just living in the patterns and conditioning of the way that it always was, and came into each other's world at divine time at that time.
Yeah, it was a beautiful way. We met, there was a row-a-thon, and that's when we first started talking to each other. And that's when, I asked her if she could help me stretch.
It was classic.
And then I got her phone number and didn't call her for a couple of weeks, which she reminds me of constantly when I tell this story.
That's a thing.
Yeah. And then there was a party, like a gym, a box party, and it was at the bar. And then we got a chance to really connect there. And after that, that's where our story started there and never ended.
Yeah.
Awesome.
The moment it began, there was no turning back. It was just a souls connected, and we couldn't have gone any other way if we wanted to. We were in it.
Wow. So it was like a knowing from the beginning.
Yeah. I always said, I never understood the term falling in love until I met Pat, because it was like, even if I wanted to stop it, because I personally didn't want a serious relationship. I had just got out of a 6.5-year relationship, and I was just like, I need some Jen time. And he had just gotten out of a couple-year relationship, and he wanted his Pat time. And, we really weren't looking for anything serious. And then we met each other, and we both were like, damn it, we can't. We would say that all the time. We'd look at each other and be like, damn it. Because we just like, there was no stopping it. It was just like, hey, this is what's going on. So,
wow.
Yeah, the rest is history.
Yeah,
That's
looking
awesome.
back, it was quantum entanglement before knowing what that was.
Yeah.
And it just, once we came together and our energies came together, it was written.
Yeah.
Wow. So, I love that y'all brought up the fact that you hadn't had like a spiritual awakening yet, and you were still in your patterns and everything. And I think there's this assumption out there in Instagram land, Instagram therapy, I like to call it, that you need to love yourself before you get into a relationship, or be fully awakened before you find that person or whatever. So what was that like for y'all? I guess both going through your own awakening in the relationship together. Did it happen at the same time? Like, how did you navigate it? What the heck was that like?
It was really interesting. And now looking back, we didn't quite know what was happening, but now looking back, it's like, oh, that was what was going on, right? We kind of went in waves, right? Like I would kind of go through some awakening and some healing part of my journey, and then Pat was here, and then all of a sudden he did, and it was kind of just this like do until we really started to recognize what was happening, and then actually could find some commonality and come at it together. But there were a couple different distinct parts within that process that, we didn't really have any people to help us through it. We didn't have any people in the Instagram world that were like, hey, help you navigate it. Like, it was very new for both of us, especially being from the Midwest, that, in 2017, 18, 19, this wasn't really common language in many places, but especially out in the Midwest, we're just kind of like a little bit behind the 8 ball over there. And there were a couple different points in that journey that it was hard because we didn't have that common ground that we once had. And Pat had said it to me, I think it was back in like 2018 or maybe 19. He's like, I feel like you're kind of going like this on this rocket ship, and I'm like going this way. And we both stopped and we're like, that's true. And then there were moments where it was the same thing with him. He was going this way and I was going this way. And we kind of realized in that moment that just 1 degree of separation, if we're not bringing that back and being cohesive with that back, then that 1 degree of separation over years this is where we're going to end up. And so it took a lot for us to be able to start to recognize like, oh, you're awakening in this, or you're healing this, or you're going through this, and I'm actually not an active part of it. And not that we have to be a part of each other's every single bits and pieces of it, but it started to become important to us to be able to recognize those things and then kind of come back together in cohesion. Otherwise, when one was up and one was down and we were kind of playing this flip-flop game, we would have just started to play completely different games. And that was, many years that we navigated that. And I feel like we're finally in this place where we actually have languaging and can catch it and feel it. But it was tough because we were completely different versions of ourselves. We were in the matrix. We were conditioned. We were living on our, responses and conditioning of our family, trauma responses, no self-awareness in the sense, no emotional intelligence in that sense. And over the past, 9 years that we've been together, we've had to navigate a lot of that in a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Because I remember it, and I remember, the path that we could have been on. Mm-hmm. But what I remember, it started as not like a spiritual awakening. It started as self-development. Mm-hmm. It started as, how do I become better at my job, or how do I become more productive, or, how do I add things into my life to just start to become better at it? And she started doing that. And I wasn't doing that. She started, reading books that were developing her and developing her self-awareness and developing her productivity and how she shows up in the world. And she started, wanting to talk to me about it and
send you podcasts and wonder why the hell you never listened to the podcast that I sent.
And then I was just, I remember being at a choice point and, really seeing what I know now is seeing the different timelines that can play out in your lives. And at the time I had no idea what it was, but essentially it was, you have a choice to be curious about what she's learning, be curious about how she's changing. Cause I saw her starting to change, and seeing a change in at the time we were married, and seeing a change in your spouse, whether it's good or bad, it's scary. It's a change. It's different. you don't know how to navigate it because it's the unknown for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember specifically having the conversation with her and knowing like, I see this going in two different directions, and I know that I have a choice. And I made the choice to read the book. I made the choice to listen to the podcast and be open. And I didn't get it at first at all, but I went through the motions and I went through the conversations with her because the guide for me was just the fact that I knew I love her. I know she's my soulmate, and the rest of the stuff I don't need to know. I just need to kind of keep going. And that's kind of how it started to unfold for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Keeping with your commitment, really, to her and the relationship. And
yeah. And then it was tough for me. Like I was the one, I mean, the reason why I was leading it is because when I was in, corporate matrix life, I was a teacher and I was getting my master's degree, and my master's degree was in leadership. So all of my leadership degree was about me, right? It's about you as a leader. Then I started to become an entrepreneur in 2018. And then I was in masterminds and programs, right? And it was like self-development on crack. And then it started to lead into a spiritual awakening. And one of the hardest things for me was not anymore, but at the time I was going first, right? Which means, and I think that this is common in any relationship, is like the person who has gone first or has invested more or whatever it is like, well, I know more and I know how to do this and you're doing it wrong. And here's what you need to do. And you need to read this book on masculinity. And why aren't you joining this program? And why aren't you doing this? And it's hard as a couple. And this is even in friendship and family and any relationship, right? It's like, we have to honor the growth and the development and the healing and the awakening of the other person. And it will look different than yours because they're different people. But that's medicine in and of itself, right? Of letting him go on his path and me go on my path, and knowing that it won't look anything, like one another. But that's the point.
There's a lot there that I could dive into, but I remember when you were sharing with me about your relationship, you shared that there was a season where y'all were like on the road for a little bit.
Yeah, a year. It was a long season.
What was that like? Why did that happen? And how did you navigate that? Because from what I remember, it was like you had a lot of separation from whether it was jobs or whatever. Then it's like you're literally living on top of each other all the time. And you mentioned that it forced you to face some things, and it was like, oh, okay, well, you can't not look at this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we were in Michigan. That's where we're from. And 2020 in Michigan during the whole pandemic was just kind of a mess. And we looked at each other and we're like, we don't want to be here anymore. So where do we want to go? And nowhere felt like home. Nowhere felt like, let's go to Austin. Let's go to, this place. And so Pat's genius idea was to live in a van and travel in a van. And I said, absolutely not. I will never live in a van.
It's bigger than a van.
Well, that's how it started. I said, I will never live in a van, but I will go to the RV store with you to take a look. And so we started off with these like van-like, and I'm like, there's no way I can live with this. And we compromised and we got a 40-foot Class A RV with like a fireplace and heated floors. Because I was like, if we're going to live in a moving vehicle, we're going to live in a moving vehicle.
It was your classic compromise in a marriage where we both compromised and agreed to get what you wanted. But no,
no, it was good. And at that same time, Pat had chose, to leave his career and come into the business, and so that we could work and grow this together. And not only because he was in the ski and snowboard industry, so he was traveling 6+ months of the year, and there was a lot of him being gone. And while we're both very independent humans, we also, after having a miscarriage at the beginning of 2020, we were like, what's the life that we want to live? Whether something tragic happens again or not, it doesn't matter. But that really woke us up to what's the life that we want to live. And if it's not one that we have the freedom to do the things that we want to do together, then what kind of life are we really living? And that really sparked this RV adventure where we sold everything in Michigan, lived in an RV, and then Pat left his job. So we were, living in an RV, now, working in the same business and traveling and navigating and all this stuff. And we literally say that our marriage aged like a solid 10 years.
Yeah, it progressed.
It was in a great way, because like you said, what I was telling you, at the event was, I'm an avoidant. You're a solid avoidant. And when you live on top of each other in a 40-foot RV, there is no avoiding. because you can't just like go to your friend's house or go to the spa or go to the gym and then hang out with your friends and go get like there's just the two of you and
Yeah.
then the dogs.
There's no hiding. So, the
Yeah.
parts of you that, you've hidden from yourself, but sometimes come out, and then, you for sure don't want present in your relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You can't hide them anymore. And so they come out. So you have to face them yourself, and then you have to face them together. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was it. And the catalyst for all of this was she started her business and she was finding success in it. And then because my job took me away a lot, when she went through the miscarriage, I wasn't there to support her during a lot of the difficult times. And so we looked at what our values were. I looked at what my values were as a husband and how we wanted our family to be in the future. And it was clear to me that we needed to just dive in and do this together so that I could be there,
Mm-hmm.
if, I needed to be. And that was one of the best decisions that we ever made. It's funny because like the big decisions were easy. It's, the smaller decisions were the ones that were harder. These big decisions that were in alignment, just, yeah, I'm going to quit my job that I've been working to get for 10 years and we're going to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
But it was a beautiful adventure.
One thing that really warmed my heart, and I remember again, I keep referencing like when you told me about this originally because it just rocked me. I was like, oh my God, I have so many questions. But Jenna, one thing that you had mentioned was your respect for Pat for things, conditioning that he's gone through to decondition around, leaving his job and supporting you, and you're making all the money in some
Mm-hmm.
ways. And the switch that happens from culturally of like the woman or the man makes the money and da da da. I'm curious for each of you, like what really had to shift, what navigated you through that, because I'm sure there's people listening who maybe who's a businesswoman and she's making a ceiling on herself because she doesn't want to make more money than her partner, or if
Yeah.
she makes too much money, then the chances of meeting somebody go down. Like there's so much there. I
Sure.
would love to dive into that.
So much. Yeah. I'll answer first and then I'll bring it to you because mine's quick and it's you. You're so right. There's so many societal conditionings around women making money as it relates to men,
Mm-hmm.
which is so interesting, right? Because there's no societal conditioning around men making too much money for women, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like there is this sort of ceiling that as women, there's a societal ceiling of like, this is what's safe, right? This is if you are going to be respected, this is going to be, whatever it is. And I think it's a beautiful thing to be aware of, but then also a really powerful thing to be conscious of and choose whatever is best for you. And I will say, just from my point of view, from the moment that we started dating, we always called ourselves a team. It just was. And there are times when I was in my master's or my ed specialist degree and I was working full time and tutoring to pay for it and starting a business and, literally like a crazy person. He picked up a lot for the team, like financially, like everything, right? He picked up a lot because this part of the team wasn't able to show up there. And then there were times where he would be going through something and then I would be picking up something for the team. So I want to preface that from the very beginning, we never had gender roles. We never had who's making more money and who's responsible for this. Even around the house, it was never I do laundry, Pat cooks, I clean. It was just always we do it. We're a team, and there's different seasons of the team, and there's different parts of the team's journey. There's different parts of the journey. Sometimes we got to train like this, and sometimes we got to train like this. But from the very beginning, it was always together in both of our senses. And so when we were going into that time in our lives where we're essentially dropping a salary and benefits and whatever else comes with that job, free sunglasses, new snowboard gear every single year. Like when we were
Way more cool stuff
yeah,
than sunglasses.
when we made the decision together, right? Because a lot of women are like, I want to retire my husband. It's like, well, that's just reinforcing the things that we don't want to reinforce, right? It's like it was a decision that we consciously chose together. And from that moment, of course, it was just we're a team. And in that moment moving forward, it might look like, because I'm the face of the business, it might look like I make the money. But all of the things that we do together all of the time that supports the business and being able to make money, like that's what I always saw. So I've never seen it, never, I don't think I ever will see it as like, I'm the breadwinner and I make more and he, like, but I see a lot of women that's the common language of, I want to retire my husband. Well, I make more than him now. And so I need this. And there's definitely another team. So there's something with money that makes people not recognize that the team of the relationship has got to be an even stronger team with money. But I'll turn that over to you because you're the one that went through all that.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, really well said. So there's a lot there. So where do I want to start? Let's say retiring your husband doesn't feel good for him or anybody. Like that's not a great term. What you're doing is you're providing a new opportunity for the family. And that's it. And so if we look at it from a team standpoint, and if you look at yourself as team members, then you're going to play different roles on the team. Some days you're going to be the point guard, or some days you're going to be the forward, or you're going to be the water boy, or you're going to be the team manager. Like you've got to be able to learn to put on these different hats within your relationship, because you're a part of a bigger thing, right? You are an individual and you need to take care of your own individual needs. However, you're also a part of a marriage, or you're a part of a relationship. And that is something that's different than your individual needs. And when you take care of both, that's where things can really get fun, because when you're coming from a place of love and compassion, and it doesn't matter what you're doing. If I'm folding laundry and I'm doing it at the end of a day that I worked my butt off, like whatever, I've got to do it. It's that old saying, get water, chop wood. Like it doesn't matter how enlightened you are, you have to do the things no matter what. So when we looked at that in our relationship, it was never a decision. It was never am I really doing the dishes again? Or do I have to cook dinner? I don't want to cook dinner. It was, no, this is what we're doing. This isn't forever. Like this is just a part of our journey. And in order to get us to the next step, like, do we want to go to the championship? Yeah. How are we going to get there? We got to do these things and chip in. So that was what got us really through the hard times. That's what got us started, honestly. That's what got us started. And then it took a lot. It took developing more tools. It took deeper understandings of ourselves and that the pattern that you talked about, to really unlock those next levels. Because as we got in the RV, as we started to work together, whole new things started coming up. And as it relates to money and masculinity, even what it is it's challenging our main views of what masculine and feminine structures are, because they're energies, they're not roles. And when you look at it from that standpoint, and we're learning now that we all have masculine and feminine energies. Well, from a masculine standpoint, the main construct that we have is that money provides safety. And if we're men and we're providing money, then we're providing safety. Well, if we take that out of it and I'm not providing money any longer, she's providing money. So the team, the family has money. We're safe there. So then from a masculine standpoint, how do I then step into a role of providing safety and support and foundation, so that the feminine energies in her of creation can thrive? And that was kind of the tipping point, or the view, the lens that needed to be looked through in order to really unlock everything within our marriage, but also the success too. Because the reality is that she's worked her butt off for everything that she's created. And if it wasn't supported in the right way on my end, I know that I could have put roadblocks. I could have done a whole bunch of stuff that would have changed the game. But from my standpoint, it's from love. I love her and I want to see her happy and thrive. And when I realized that in certain areas that I was sacrificing my happiness, then I was looking at that, because I don't want to be a martyr. which is easy for men to step into. And so that's also one thing, a part of the path, is like, okay, where am I sacrificing my happiness for hers? How do I change that while still holding what we want to do?
Very well said, man. And it's like you said, is deepening your sense of masculinity beyond the role. It's like getting to the energy of it, which I really love that. And y'all have brought up the team thing a lot. What's some tips, tools, recommendations, perspectives that you have that you can pass to other people who feel like maybe they've been in a relationship, but they haven't been in a team before? Maybe they want that. They don't know how to get there. I would love for y'all to just talk on that bit, because if, that is such a big cornerstone of y'all's relationship and teamwork and navigating all of this stuff. If that's been a foundational piece, I would really love to go into that.
Since you just brought up the energy piece, I think that kind of started in that conversation from that point of a part of being in a team is that here I am fully dedicated to me and my happiness and my growth and my evolution and my healing and really truly becoming, the best version of myself. Sounds super simple, super easy, super cliche, but like that's it. Pat doing the same exact thing. And then us coming together, and essentially the relationship can only expand and grow and evolve and flourish as much as we are individual. Right? So if I'm not fully committing to my own shadow work, to my own healing, to my own growth, to my own evolution, to my own, right? Yes, of course, the masculine provides safety, but we also both have masculine and feminine within ourselves. So it's actually my job to make sure that I feel safe within myself, so that then I can feel safe within him, right? And so it's like recognizing, I think that's one thing that we've both really been committed to, especially the last couple of years, is we're two individuals that are coming together, and the relationship can only be as strong as the weakest link. And so individually being open with ourselves, like real raw radical responsibility. I know for me, I've had times where the safety piece is huge, where I'm like, or the trust piece, there's a trust. And when I say trust, it's not like with another woman or like breaking that trust. What I mean is that there's been times where I'm like, I don't trust the masculinity. I don't trust that you're going to follow through on things. I don't trust that when you say that you've got this idea, you're going to do it. And then I stop and I'm like, he's just a mirror for you, Jen, because you said that you were going to do this, this, and this, and you haven't done it yet. So you're actually not really pissed at him. You're pissed at yourself, and he's just showing you that. Right. But like that takes radical responsibility. So I would say the first tip, trick, tool, foundation is just really, truly being willing to look at yourself, really, truly having the courage to do something about it, having the courage to go get support. I mean, we both have I always say it, I've got my squad that supports me and my growth and my evolution and my healing. He's got his squad. And then we get to come together for that. But we also are an active, loving part of each other's journey, right? So we're both committed to this journey, but then we have time throughout the week that I'm like, hey, how did your therapy appointment go today? What are you working on? What's an edge that you're coming up against? What's something that frustrated you today? So we really have these check-in points definitely throughout the week, but really throughout the day. At night, we'll sit down and it's like, hey, tell me how your day went today. Because it's so easy in a relationship when you've been together for so long to sit down at the end of the day and just like disassociate and bow out. Now we still battle that sometimes, but for the most part, we are conscious about being an active part of each other's journey.
We don't want to be roommates.
Yeah. If I wanted a roommate, I yeah, I wouldn't have chosen you.
I understand. There's better roommates.
Someone who doesn't leave his like shirts all over the place and cups and stuff.
It's summer in Texas. Like you kind of burn through a few shirts a day. You know what I mean?
It's true.
Yeah. So what tips you got?
I would say, to pull yourself, like get the high level view of your relationship, outline your goals individually and together.
Yeah.
Look at like, what's your championship? Like, what's that look like to you as a couple? Because if you don't, there's individual goals that are important, and then there's shared goals. Mm-hmm. And if you can't come together on the shared goals, and know how to support each other on their individual goals,
Yeah.
then the drift becomes much harder. No one's paddling in the same direction. Like take these business concepts or these concepts that are applied to teams and apply them to your marriage, because they're so easily, transmittable, and it gets you on the same page, and you can get excited. You can have that shared goal, and you can both work towards it and encourage each other to get there. And then when you share your personal goals, you can support each other and share in the joy, and then support in the blocks and the things that come up, or even when they don't work out. Like you do have a great idea, or I have a great idea, and it doesn't happen. And then you have another one, and it doesn't happen. And it's easy. And this is from my experience, that shame cycle or that disappointment cycle. Like, oh, I had this idea. I didn't do it again. I didn't do it again. I didn't do it again. And when you recognize those in yourself, but then that that's something that your partner is struggling with, then you can support them much better in it. You can also not add to that by saying, well, that's just another thing you didn't do, because they're already their hardest critic on it.
That would be the one thing, is like really knowing each other to the depths and the intricacies, right? Like I know his core wounds. I know his core traumas. I know what he beats himself up over. And it took years for us to get to a place where we can admit to each other, like, I beat myself up over this every single day. Right. Like he said, like when we were in the RV, he's like, it's easy. Like, I don't even want to face this, let alone let you see this. Right. And so we're at that point in our relationship, in our marriage, because we both been doing such deep work that we can have those conversations with one another. But it's like, I know what he drives himself crazy over. It's not my job as a wife to be like, why didn't you get that done? I've talked with a lot of friends about that. And we actually just talked about this last weekend. Like, well, how do you call him up though, if you're not pointing out the things that you need him to call him up? And I'm like, listen, this king queen shit, put it aside for a second. This isn't my job. My job isn't to hold the vision of my king and call him up. My job is to be his fucking partner through thick, through thin, through everything, and to know him and love him and care about him. Because if he's in a trauma loop or a pattern that's actually rooted from his 7-year-old boy, do you know what a 7-year-old boy doesn't need? An asshole mom telling him what it is that he needs to do. Like, and I'll ask him, like, what do you need from me right now? Or do you want me to be a part of this right now? How can I support you in this right now? Not, oh God, I see you doing this again, and it's like, that's the beauty of having a relationship and being in it so long, is like, you get to know that. And I honestly think that's one of the most sacred parts of a relationship. Like that is the most sacred thing. And we don't have that to use it because we want them to change. We have it because there's so much love that this is a part of holding love. And the best way to be able to support one another is by knowing what to do in that sense and asking what it is to do in that sense. And so that's another piece of it, is God, honor all parts of them, just like we honor all parts of ourselves. Like he honors the 17-year-old me that gets a little angry sometimes. He has temper tantrums, and like he honors those parts of me just like I honor those parts of him. And I think that's one of the biggest tools that anybody can ever use in a relationship, because otherwise you're just parenting because of something that's missing within you.
Yeah. That's such a huge point. Do you feel like you get to that place through self-compassion first? Or do you think that it's...
No, because sometimes I think I have more compassion for him than I have myself. And I think that you'd say the same thing.
Yeah, I would. And I would also say that, and this is something that I've recently really come to understand on a deeper level, is the forgiveness. Forgiveness of yourself is a huge stepping stone to healing whatever that trauma was, or healing whatever that loop was, but then really being able to show up differently in your relationship. So until I looked at that little boy, or I looked at that pattern, and I looked at it, and I was truly able to offer myself forgiveness and compassion, it helped me really understand what those really meant. Like the understanding of what forgiveness and compassion really felt like versus what the words were
Mm.
and how I could portray them to her. And so having that deeper understanding of the truth of that has allowed me to show up with more compassion and love and forgiveness for her in the relationship. And it's felt, those things are truly felt.
So I've mentioned a lot of like coming together and having these heart-to-heart conversations, confronting conversations, or whatever it is to get on the same page as a team. Do y'all just kind of do that spontaneously when it's showing up, or do y'all like sit down once a week and hash it out? Like, what does that look like for y'all?
We don't do well with schedules. For like years, we tried to like put Jen and Pat time, teamwork time on the calendar, and I'll tell you what happened to that. Nothing. Yeah, we just don't do well with like, hey, this is going to be a time that we carve out for that. Because what if the energy is not there? What if it's a Friday and you're like ready to go wake surfing, but it's like, hey, we've got couples time. It doesn't feel good for us. I know it works wonders with other people, but for us, we really have just made it kind of a fluid part of our lives. And that was difficult at first because, I'll be in the zone and like creation and I'm in these like high energy and I just like record all these YouTube videos and I got all these things going on. And then all of a sudden, like Pat would come to me and he's like, yeah, so, and I was literally just like, you just dropped a legitimate bomb on me. Like, that's not okay. Like, cause I'm here and I'm in this mode. And then all of a sudden I need to go into like this mode and like, I can't do that right now. And so what we do is we're very fluid with it, but we'll typically ask, unless we're just like lounging, and have nothing else going on, we'll just kind of ask each other like, hey, I've got this thing that's coming up right now. Do you have space to talk about it? And it's like, yes, I do. And then I know, right? Like each other, we know, hey, I'm actually needing to switch gears right now and be like a true partner versus just it's there. Or we'll say something along the lines of, I'm actually not in that zone. I'm not there right now. What about in like 2 hours from now? Does that work for you? Yeah, that works for me. Okay, perfect. Or do you want to do that at dinner tonight? And so we had to this was more so because of me, because he would come with something. And if I'm in coaching mode, then I'm just going to coach him. And guess what? He doesn't need me to be his coach.
Yeah.
Right. Or like if I'm in like get shit done mode and he would come to me and then I'm like, it's simple. Do this done. He's like, that's not what I was looking for right there. So that was really more so for me because I actually have a hard time sometimes going from one energy to another one. And there's usually like a transition that I have to kind of go through and shift into. He's really good. He could be in the middle of putting up a rack in the garage and I can be like, babe, something came up, and he's so good at that transitioning. But we typically just ask each other and then make the space for it as soon as it's available.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's been the biggest thing for us is asking where the other person's at.
Yeah.
Are you in a place right now that we can have this conversation? Are you open?
Yeah.
Are you open to hearing, a suggestion from me, like that I'm noticing, instead of just blasting that criticism at them, or whatever it is. And it's turned into something that's all aspects. So if it's something that we're struggling with, or, if it's relationship, emotional, whatever. And since we've been in business together and we do life together, then it's also, hey, I've got some business things I want to talk to you about.
Yeah.
Are you open for that? And then it kind of gets into the nuts and bolts of the marriage too, because when you live with somebody, you have to, sort out logistical things and life things, and you do all the things. And so we're tuned in a lot more now to each other to know, okay, I can know this. I know she's not in that space, but then there's other times where I'm like, well, I don't want to wait. I can't wait. Like, we got to talk about this. So let me just see if you're open. And then it gives the other person the chance to stop, pause, and just really check in and be like, am I open? Yeah. I could be open. Yeah. Instead of react poorly to whatever it is I'm throwing out there.
But because that's the worst thing. And I think a lot of people do this. And we even do this as a society. Like, let me call my mom right now and complain about something. Or let me call my friend right now. And let me just expect that even though she's in Hawaii right now, she's going to want to talk to me about what it is that I'm going through, right? Like, we do this as a society where we kind of just barge into people's lives and just expect that the other person's going to be able to meet them there. And so that's one thing that we're really respectful of in our lives, but also in this relationship is just making sure that we're both on the same page. Because if we're not, if my mind's caught up in the fact that I just went to therapy and I've got all these things that are unloading in my mind right now, and then his mind is like, all right, we're going to get shit done and we got to have a finance talk, we're going to do this, we could come together. But if we're not on the same frequency, if we're not on the same plane and same dimension, it's going to be useless, and we're probably going to end in an argument because one person's not on the other, the side of the other one. But the one thing that we do is, like, whenever we go, if we go out to dinner or we go out to like happy hour or something with just the two of us, that is usually like a signifier of like, let's have like our dream talks, like let's have like our crazy what if talks, like let's start to like what if we had a house in the mountains in Montana and like there's just something about going out and being in another establishment and having like a cocktail or a mocktail or just like an appetizer. There's something about that we've always, going out, just the two of us, has always been like, we'll both sit down and be like, okay, let's play. And we just play what we call the what if game. And it's like, that's just where we kind of just crazy dream. And we don't think about how it's going to happen. So that is one thing that sometimes we'll put it on the calendar. Like we have a date night on Friday. Sometimes we don't. But whenever we like sit in an establishment with like something about those little beverage, those little useless cups that they put things in that just like sparks celebration and dreaming. So we do that.
That's special. I love that. Really what you're talking about is you're respecting each other, and you're like, let me respect where they're at so that I'm not just going to bombard on you. I really love that you have that acuteness and awareness to like ask each other, and you developed that. That's really amazing. Because I was going to dive more into like how it is working together and living together, and how do you navigate wearing the different hats, so to speak. Are there things there that you do?
Well, I mean, definitely like the scheduling, right? And the different, like, different days are different things in our world. Like Tuesday's team days. So we're very much like team structure, planning, executing, right? Like that's very much the vibe of that day. There's other days that are more creation days. We have other days that are more brainstorming days. So we definitely have that. We don't necessarily need to do like a hard, like no business talk and just like living. Because throughout the many years now, we've kind of just naturally gotten to that place. I think we do it really good actually, because we really both value fun and being outside and playing. Like we both very much value that. So we don't really need to like turn it on or turn it off. I would say the one thing that I like that I'm constantly working on is that a business naturally calls a woman or a man, it doesn't matter, to be more in their masculine. It just does. It's more of a, you're building a business, right? Is it feminine led? Is it intuitive led? Does the feminine lead and the masculine builds? Of course. But there are times that I have to, my office, I chose this office in the house because it's as far away from everything else as possible. It's like upstairs and in the corner, and it's like the last room. And I was like, I need my office to be in this room because I need to actually like physically leave and like leave the masculine stuff behind. And when I walk down the stairs, I'm like then in the feminine, because what does my husband not need? Me and my masculine like battling him for alpha. It's just not what either one of us needs. So that's the one thing that I'm continuously aware of is, do I still have a little bit of the remnants of the masculine, or can I leave that behind and shut that down so that I can actually be in this relationship? Because the majority of the relationship doesn't require me to be in my masculine energy. Even if I'm really good at it, it doesn't require it.
Yeah, I would say you can't take things personally. It's really easy to blur the lines when you're in business with your partner, when you're in business with friends. It's really easy to blur that line, and to be able to distinguish one from the other is really important. And not taking things personally is one of the biggest changes for me that has shifted, that allows me to show up better. Because if something triggers me or takes it personally, that's not her fault all the time. You know what I mean? Like, it's not always somebody else's fault. And for us, how it relates in the business is you have, it's her personal brand, and it's what she created. And so I'm in this position to take over the structure of the business so that she can stay in the creation mode. But at the end of the day, there's always going to be ideas and things that I have that I want to implement that maybe don't 100% feel good for her to implement into the business. And that's the part where you have to really discern between, it's not a personal attack on you because your idea isn't good enough or whatever. It's just the fact that, you're two different people who have two different ideas about how to run a business and what that should look like. And so the communication part it's really forced us to progress our communication, and that's been, a challenge and also a blessing.
Yeah, for sure. But it's also me, like, and this wasn't always the case, because for a while it was like, listen, I built what I built and I built it my way, and like, it's my way, right? Which was my own shit that I had to work on, right? But throughout the years, I started to realize, like, Pat's a genius in so many areas that I don't even speak that language, right? Like, because of his history and his corporate career and his trainings and his line of work, he knows so many things that it sounds like he's legitimately speaking another language. And I'm like, I don't know what it is that you're talking about. And historically, if there's something that I'm not aware of, I avoid it. I don't know. It makes me feel like an idiot. Nope, I don't want to hear about it. Right. And so there's been the opportunity for me to look at him and be like, I don't know what you're talking about, but I understand that this might be good here. So can you help me in understanding this? But throughout the years, I've recognized, like, I'm a genius in what I'm a genius in. And the other parts I really am not good at, but he's so good at that. And so again, it's the team, right? It's the recognizing, like, this is my idea, but I have no idea what to do with this. And he's like, I got that. And so we get to work together in that way. And that's been really fun. And your genius gets to come out, and then my genius gets to come out, and then we get to just dance with that.
That's really fun. I'm sure you've fallen into this place. It just feels like working in business together is really fun for y'all, is what it feels like.
Yeah.
Which is beautiful.
Yeah. We've got we're no short of ideas. We just keep going and keep rolling with it and keep creating, and it is fun. And there's still hiccups all the time in every part of it. There's still hiccups, but we just know that that's a part of a road trip. It's going to be that you hit a pothole every now and then, So what do we do with it?
We're just better at navigating the hiccups.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to be present. It's never going to be a perfect scenario. It's not always the greatest thing ever. But we've developed a better resilience against coming up against these problems and how we're going to resolve them. And knowing that above all, our love and our marriage is the thing that we value the most. The business is beautiful and everything, but what we value the most is our marriage. And so we've really kind of identified our core values as it relates to our marriage, as it relates to the business. And that allows us to really navigate within both of those, really well, because we've already come to the agreement of it. And we have created fun around doing this, because we get to, everything that we get to do now, we get to do together, and we get to turn that into business, and we get to turn that into a lifestyle that we're, in control of. And on the other side of that too, like, what we're learning as well is it can still be very important for you to have your own thing to develop your own thing too on the side. So we love having our business together, and it's number one importance.
Yeah.
And we love to have our own individual projects that we get to work on, that can create income, that can create purpose.
Yeah.
Because, my soul's purpose could be expressing in different ways, and her soul's purpose, but together we know that we have a lot of power of creation together as well.
Yeah. It's definitely important that we do our own stuff and have our own, our own things. Like, when I met you at the event, like, Pat's like, do you want me to come? And I'm like, no. We're like, like, if you want to, you can, of course, but like, no, there's absolutely not, like, that. No, and it's like, he's got his things, he's got his routes, some different types of work that he does. And there's parts of my business that I'm like, no, the team's got this, because we have a team as well, right? And where I'm like, no, you don't need to touch this. The team's got it. Like, you don't need to be a part of this. The team's got it, you know? So there's like in my team, we have integrators, right? So it's not like Pat's not the sole integrator of like, hey, well, Jen's idea, and then Pat goes into like, you know, like we have people that support the business. And so it is important to have our separate things, have our separate hobbies, separate friends, and have our separate experiences, because we are already very like connected in life and business and all the things. And I think we both know that it's healthy not to like 24/7 every single thing we eat, sleep, and breathe it, because again, we're two separate humans. And then the relationship, the marriage is the third. So it's important for us.
Which is very important to have individual identity, I think, because otherwise you just get it meshed into, you know, whether it's the business or the relationship or both.
Yeah.
I absolutely have loved this conversation and y'all's energy together, and just your journey. It's really inspiring to hear, and the level of awareness and really teamwork that comes out in your relationship, and y'all just talking about it really has been a level that I haven't really seen much of before. Maybe a few times other than that, but I just want to say it's beautiful. Your relationship's amazing. And I would love to know, one last question. Each of you individually, what have you learned from the other?
Wow. That's well, I mean, it's to get I want to have a really nice, like, you know, to the point answer, because I've learned a lot from her. You know, I mean, it's endless. It's endless what I think that we keep learning from each other.
Yeah.
Presence. I've learned presence from her, because she has the amazing ability to have the most childlike joy and fun at any point in the day. And I could be consumed in a task or a project, or like, you know, my mind is focused on this thing I'm doing, and she comes along.
I'm like, boring.
And she's, you know, being silly or whatever. And it would be, I'd notice resistance, you know, I'd be like, no, stop. I'm doing something right now. But what I've learned is, why not just be present in the moment and enjoy that fun?
Yeah.
And so you've taught me a lot about being present.
Aww.
Yeah.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
That's cool. Oh my gosh. What have you taught me? Yeah, so much. This is a really hard question. Thanks for asking it. And I'm going to ponder this for like a long time. I'm actually going to do this with like people in my lives too, because what a beautiful thing this is, right? Like,
that's a cool question.
You've taught me how to be grounded, like really, truly, like how to like be grounded and embodied. You were like the walking and just so grounded in nature. You've taught me safety, like what real true safety and security is, and adventure. Like, because I really can like I feel like a child, right? Like I could like create a fort in my house and just like do nothing all day long and like chat with my birds in the backyard, and like I could like never leave my home. I have birds in the backyard. I'm like a bird lady. But like you really truly bring adventure to life. And I think as somebody who's always been looking for just safety, like in my upbringing, right? Like adventure was never even a thought in my mind. And so you bring, grounded safety and adventure. Is what you've taught me.
Let's keep it going.
Let's keep it going. Let's keep it going.